So what's happening, guys? Hope your day is going well. Hope it's going better than mine. This is the third take, the third review. The first review, I stopped at a storage unit to pick something up on the way home, and the microphone cut out halfway through. I was like, whatever, I'm going to do it again. Things happen all the time. So then from the storage unit, I come to the store, and before I go into the store, I did another review, and I listened to the review. I was like, yeah, nailed it. Listened to the review, the vocals were all crackly. So I was like, what the heck? So I'm in the store debating, going in my head like, okay, I got to get going. I got to go home. I got to make food. I got to sleep for a couple hours before I go off to my second job. And then I'm walking to the truck. I'm like, screw it. I'm going to try it one more time. So this is the third try. So if you're new to the channel, my name is David. This is my mission to muscle. And before we get into Peak Performance Labs AmentoPump, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed to the channel. And don't forget to hit that like button because it helps this information get out to people. So Peak Performance Labs AmentoPump. See if we can get the focus in there. There we go. Something's going on with the camera here as well. AmentoPump, what is this about? This is amentoflavone. So we're going to get into this. This is a very interesting ingredient. So this is similar to caffeine without the stimulation, but enhanced. So cognitive function, you got fat metabolism, carbohydrate metabolism, energy production, and unlike caffeine, you have vasodilation with this. So I'll get into this. We'll get into the ingredient first. If you're new to the channel, just so you know, I go over the ingredients to try to explain how the ingredient works for you guys. I came down with type 1 diabetes when I was in my 40s. I'm 53 right now. And ever since my son came up to me and said, "Dad, don't leave me," he just gave me chills, almost made me cry when he did that. And he was so sincere about it. I said to myself, that's it. I'm going to be around for my son, my daughter, my grandkids, and for my family. So ever since then, like whenever it comes to supplements and stuff like that, I dive into them. Like I want to know about it. And so over the years, I gathered a lot of information up in the head. It seems like sometimes there's crossing and overflowing out of my ears, but I get a lot of information. Got a lot of information up there. I got a lot of information on how this kind of works. Try to simplify things for you guys. So if you're new to the channel, I'll go over the ingredient, kind of basically what it does, and then we'll go over my effects afterwards and what I experienced on the product. So amentoflavone, what is it? It's a PDE inhibitor. And what that is we have PDE3, PDE4, and PDE5. PDE5 is most recognized for Cialis and Viagra. They're straight PDE5 inhibitors, which allows blood flow for the lungs, oxygen delivery in the lungs, and also in the lower extremities. So that's what PDE5 does. And then PDE4, if it gets too high, we get inflamed. So inhibiting PDE4 is going to help with inflammation, also some vasodilation, some relaxation of the blood vessels as well. And then PDE3 helps with the vasodilation and relaxation of blood vessels by releasing calcium. All these functions are done not necessarily by nitric oxide release in the endothelial tissue, but by calcium release out of the smooth muscles. So PDE5 helps with cardiac function, heart health, vasodilation, and bronchodilation, I believe. So we got a PDE inhibitor. So we're throwing this in our body, and what's happening is when we inhibit PDE, what happens is the body will increase cyclic AMP and cyclic GMP. And cyclic AMP, we're going to try to simplify this to this product on how this works for the effects on this. Cyclic AMP as far as for fat burning, vasodilation, and calcium release for muscle contractions. CMP, or cyclic AMP, is going to activate the dormant pKa, which is protein kinase A. We have all kinds of protein kinase in our body, but protein kinase A is probably one of the most recognized protein kinase in the body. It will switch that on because normally that's in an off position. It switches that on, and what protein kinase A does is cyclic AMP is an enhancer. So it is a metabolic enhancer. So it's going to magnify. It's a magnifier. So is cyclic GMP of processes. And what happens when it activates pKa phosphorylates other enzymes and other proteins in the body to turn them on. So for one thing, when it comes to carbohydrate metabolism, it phosphorylates glucanase, which is the protein that actually will jumpstart the breakdown and the removal and distribution of glycogen within the plasma blood or the bloodstream to be delivered to the cells to be used as energy, as ATP, eventually, as it's broken down. And then it also phosphorylates two enzymes that release triglycerides that attach to adipose tissue and release and break down triglycerides into the bloodstream of the plasma blood to go to the cells, which where there it enters the cell through the carnitine shuttle, which is the carnitine shuttle is a carnitine enzyme on the outside of the cell and on the inside of the cell. And when this phosphorylation process is all going on and the metabolic processes are all going on, they're switched on and they allow triglycerides to come into the mitochondria. And in the mitochondria, it's the triglyceride is broken down again and again and again and again and again. It's chopped up into coenzyme A. So there's a bunch of coenzyme A's in the cell, and they're thrown into the citric acid cycle within the cell, which is the energy firehouse of the cell. And that's how we produce this fat powerhouse ATP producing energy. So that's how this thing is going to help with fat metabolism and energy on a cellular level, as far as coupled with the blood flow. So the blood flow is going to be enhanced just from that action there, and energy nutrients are going to be transferred to cells to provide energy, to provide working muscles, and to give them energy. And then we have the focus factor, and then the last is going to be the calcium release. When pKa starts to phosphorylate other enzymes in the body, one of the enzymes or one of the proteins, binding proteins it phosphorylates is Krebs, which not Krebs with a K, Krebs with a C. It's a binding protein within the cells. And what that does is when that is switched on, that actually helps the body produce more tyrosine hydroxylase, which is a precursor to dopamine for brain function, cognitive focus, and function. So I said brain function twice. And also it increases brain derived nootropic factor, which is a protein in the brain that helps rejuvenate and helps replenish neurons in the brain for cognitive function and focus. So that's how this is going to help with a bit of cognitive function and focus. I'll get into that afterwards and how that actually works. And then as far as the calcium release, what that does is when all this phosphorylation is going on, and then we got the cyclic GMP that's activating as well. The cyclic GMP activates and helps with calcium release through the Ca2 plus channels, which are calcium release channels in the muscle cells, but also cyclic GMP helps with nitric oxide release within the endothelial tissue. So we got the relaxation that's caused from calcium from the soft tissue, and then we got nitric oxide released in the blood vessels for the vasodilation, in two aspects there. And then we got the calcium release that's initiated by cyclic GMP, but also by the activation of G proteins that are attached to muscle cells. It helps to increase calcium output. And this has been shown or studied to increase calcium 20 times stronger than caffeine. So we got vasodilation, we got fat metabolism and carbohydrate metabolism, we got calcium release for strength, and we got cognitive focus in this. So how did this do? So AmentoPump, I took this for 5 days. So for 5 days, I took it with 200 milligrams of caffeine every single day as far as workouts. And one day I took it twice. So I took it again when I went to work at night, because I was like, you know what? I want to see what it does at this job, this second job where I'm unloading trucks and boxes and pulling out pallets and bending down, and I'm just a workout in itself. So I want to test it there as well, because I want to give you guys an idea on how you could utilize this. You can utilize this with your with your pre-workouts, the fat burners, blah, blah, blah. So I'll let you guys know. And I'll also let you guys know, don't go yet, because there is something important you need to know that you don't do when you take a cyclic AMP enhancing ingredient. Something you don't want to do. You want to make sure you don't want to do this. So we'll get into the effects. So the effects on its own, by itself, when I took it that one time, the cognitive function and focus is not much different than 300 milligrams of caffeine. So it is a dialed in, so you don't have the stimulatory effect, but you have this kind of concentration of focus that drops you into a good dialed in focus. So very, very nice as far as for just a step up focus for dialing into the training. Now, as an all around ingredient, this all comes together as a very dialed in for training, very dialed in contraction workout type ingredient. I mean, because you don't need much more than this to get the job done. I'm telling you right now. So the focus on its own is like a caffeine focus at 300 milligrams. So without the stimulation. So just so you know that. And then if you stack this with something, then you're just going to get increased focus and concentration from there. The pumps on this, the pumps alone on this thing with nothing else stacked. I stacked bloody hell the last day, and bloody hell, what a workout. I'll get into that afterwards as well. So the pumps on this thing, vasodilation. So you get some vein popping and you get some tightness. Nothing crazy. So don't get me wrong, this is a 2-pill product here. It's not like an amazing ingredient that's going to be like, you know, the end-all be-all pump ingredients or anything like this. But this, stacked with something else, is going to enhance the effects. I'll get into that, like I said, afterwards. So pumps are decent on this just by itself. So you get cognitive function, pumps, energy, because you're getting some blood flow effect. You really do feel the underlying extra energy on the cellular level for the breakdown, the breakdown of the glucose and the fats. I mean, you really do feel that extra energy in the gym. This thing shines. Where this shines is the damn muscle contractions. Now you got to take this for 3 days before you really say, okay, this thing really works. 3 to 4 days, because it built for me as far as the muscle contractions. The first day I was like, it's kind of like caffeine. I feel like caffeine. I'm still going to take it and run it. So I took it the second day and it was increased. I was like, whoa, okay. And then the third and fourth day, I was just hanging on the bar doing pull-ups. I was like doing pull-ups. I'd stop halfway and I'd just swing back and forth. And I was like holding it and I was like, yeah. You know, the contractions are really, really good. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm smiling at stuff just because it felt so good. Personally, I'm dialed into myself and I could hold the contractions way longer than without this product, with taking this product. It really, really helped on the contractions with the calcium release there. So very, very good. Stacking it with bloody hell, just so you know, I didn't stack with any other pump product, but I'm telling you right now, and this will stack well with a fat burner, I believe, because this will help with the energy levels and the cognitive function and a little bit of vasodilation for some blood pressure regulation. But stacking this with bloody hell was crazy. I'm telling you something, I was tight, blood vessels were popping everywhere, and what it did was enhanced everything. And I went online, I was like, nitric oxide, what does it enhance CAMP? Does it enhance blah, blah, blah? And I found when I'm doing all the studies that tacking in more nitric oxide to a product like this, a CAMP increasing and GMP increasing product, it's going to amplify everything. And it did do that. Now, getting into the what not to do with this. Do not take this with a carbohydrate meal. So do not take this around a carbohydrate meal. Give it an hour and a half to 2 hours before or after a carbohydrate containing meal. And the reason for that is carbohydrates are going to spike insulin. And what the body's going to do is it's going to recognize insulin as our fat carbohydrate storage hormone, and it's going to recognize that, and it's going to say, hey, wait, we don't want metabolism going on, and it's going to squash CAMP levels. So it's going to keep that energy metabolism down. So you want to make sure that it's at least an hour and a half to 2 hours where your body's metabolized the carbohydrates and the insulin spike isn't that great. Now, what I did notice is I took EAAs, which spike insulin, equivalent 6 to 10 grams of EAAs. A spike insulin, I think, equivalent to about 10 grams of carbs, believe it or not. The leucine does in there. And I did notice no downturning effects on taking this when I was taking that like an intro workout with EAA. So it didn't affect this at all, didn't affect the effects. And I would imagine, with that said, I didn't take carbs with like an intro pre-workout, but if you do decide to take an intro pre-workout, I would keep it under 20 grams of carbs with any intra-pre-workout or intra-workout that you're taking, because even though we're getting some sort of an insulin spike while we're training, and you're sipping carbs, if you sip carbs during your workout, your cells are going to be like hypersensitive, so they're not going to use as much. The body's not going to use as much insulin for trafficking the energy to where it's got to go, because the cells are going to be hypersensitive. So you're going to use like half of the insulin that your body's going to use if you're sitting dormant. So I would imagine 20 grams under of carbs would be okay with this. But like I said, I didn't test it. But EAAs, like an EAA formula, is fine with taking this. So it doesn't, the insulin spike from the EAAs does not mess with this. So hopefully that helps. I've got to get going now. I'm just regretting checking the volume on this next. I'm just hoping that this thing went through this time. So wish me luck. If it's posted, you know it worked. Other than that, this is Dave. I'm going to get going. You guys have a wonderful night. We'll see you next time on the channel.